The headless ghost king protected the boy in his arms as soon as he was born. Not only did the legendary Snow Corpse General personally clear the way for him, even spirit medium Deaf Granny was willing to sacrifice herself to save him. Even a ghost immortal, who had cultivated for 1,000 years, came to propose to him. Only because the boy is a child of extreme Een, a rare encounter in 10,000 years. Once he cultivates the ghostly Tao, his cultivation speed will be 100 times faster than that of an ordinary person. But he will also become the best choice for Bai Gui possession. Therefore, he has become the target of 100 ghosts fighting for him. On this day, which happened to be the ghostly gate opening on the 15th day of the 7th lunar month, a pregnant woman went door to door asking for help to save her unborn child. Owen, who was half asleep, was very puzzled, wondering who it could be at this late hour. But he saw that the visitor had a pale complexion. He couldn't help but take another look. He then realized that it was a pregnant woman with a big belly. He thought that she must be a pitiful woman, so he kindly invited her into the house to rest. But at that moment, the deaf granny next door shouted loudly, "Don't mind her, she's already a dead person." Upon hearing this, Owen was suddenly scared and broke out in a cold sweat. He took a few steps back in a row, but he was grabbed by the woman's wrist. "Please, save my child." Deaf Granny, holding a willow whip, slowly approached. "I am a legitimate spirit medium disciple, serving the 4 pillars and 8 columns of the immortals. How dare you demons run wild here?" As soon as she finished speaking, she whipped the woman fiercely, causing her to let out a sharp scream, only to see white smoke rising from the spot where Deaf Granny had whipped. However, the woman, despite being in intense pain, continued to roar fiercely. "I didn't die, and neither did my child," she said. Upon hearing this, Deaf Granny couldn't help but sigh. "Your vitality has already dissipated. You have only managed to hang on until now due to the strong determination of being a mother," she said. "Your unborn child is probably gone as well." But Deaf Granny didn't finish her sentence. The woman angrily tore open her clothes on her belly and roared, "My child is still alive! He's still alive!" Deaf Granny and Owen were both stunned when they saw the huge centipede on the woman's belly. They were shocked to discover that it was actually a deadly fetus being transferred. How could someone use such a malicious secret art to harm others? Deaf Granny suddenly realized what was going on. The fetus's life is hanging by a thread now. If the fetus in the woman's belly dies, and her attachment disappears, she will turn into a ghost struggling to deliver. Then the pregnant women in the village will be in danger. Upon hearing Deaf Granny's words, Owen hastily said, "Then we should quickly assist with the delivery." But Deaf Granny quickly calculated by snapping her fingers. She was suddenly covered in cold sweat. This child cannot be born. It's almost midnight. And tonight at the Z hour it's the Een year month and time if this child is born. It will cause the living to cry and the 100 ghosts to laugh. Moreover, a child of extreme Een is born with mediumship, and once engaged in spiritual practice, the speed of ghostly Tao will be hundreds of times faster than ordinary ones, making it the best choice for evil ghosts' possessions. Nowadays, it seems that the area within 100 miles is probably being watched by ghosts, who want to seize corpses for cultivation. If this child is born, it will surely lead to the night parade of hundreds ghosts, and both you and I will die here. But at this moment, the clock strikes at the Z hour. The woman suddenly let out a painful howl. The centipede on her stomach also came alive at this moment. The centipede leaped up and bit towards Deaf Granny. Luckily, Owen was agile and strong. He drew the big knife behind him. He immediately chopped the centipede into 2 pieces. But the woman's abdomen was missing the stitches of the centipede. The baby in her belly fell out wrapped in black blood. Seeing this situation, Deaf Granny reluctantly picked up the baby. This child of extreme Een was finally born. Owen on the side suddenly asked doubtfully, "How come this child doesn't have an umbilical cord?" It turns out that the baby was taken out of the mother's body as soon as it was formed. He and 5 poisons blood were stuffed into a woman's body born in the Een year, month, and time. That's why there is no umbilical cord. Moreover, the person performing the transplantation must be the child's direct relative. After the child matures, he will torture the woman to death. By then, the evil chi will rise to the sky without any consciousness. He will only obey the person casting the spell. Only with deep blood feuds will one seek such revenge on enemies. Not only does this harm the child, but even the child's biological parents will be cursed. After death, they will become lonely ghosts wandering around. The underworld will not even accept them. Saying this, deaf Granny couldn't help but use her hands to stroke the woman's head. You have suffered so much. Rest assured, I will help raise the child properly. However, the woman knelt directly on the ground. This is a family heirloom of the child. I hope you won't tell him the truth. I can only repay your great kindness in the next life. As the woman's obsession dissipated, she completely lost her life force. However, as the woman fell, eerie voices suddenly emanated from all around, calling out Owen's name. Upon hearing this, Owen was about to respond. He was promptly stopped by Deaf Granny. This is a ghost's call. Do not pay any attention to it. The ghostly gate has been opened now. The scent of the 5 poisons' blood is becoming more intense. These dirt creatures can't wait any longer. Take the child back inside first. I will deal with them. After that, Deaf Granny performed the hand seal 4 pillars and 8 columns of the immortals, asking the 8th master to possess her. As Deaf Granny's words fell, behind her, the figure of a huge snake suddenly appeared. Owen also knew the situation was urgent, and quickly carried the boy back into the house. He handed the boy over to Deaf Granny's children. Deaf Granny's son only saw Owen return alone. He was anxious to go out and help. Owen, however, reassured him not to worry. Your mom is the most powerful spirit medium disciple within a radius of 100 miles. In addition, this is the great seal of your mom. She asked you to take it and sit on the rooftop. You must not speak or move, no matter what happens. If something happens to me and your mother, take your wife and children and run. Hide under the old pine tree at East Peak. It will protect you. After finishing these instructions, Owen came into the yard. He took out a piece of cloth and securely tied the machete to his hand. The Deaf Granny possessed by 8th Master saw Owen coming out again, feeling somewhat surprised. Hey, old man, why are you back again? Upon hearing this, Owen respectfully said, You are the mediums of immortals for 8th Master and Deaf Granny, while I am her old neighbor. We each have our own responsibilities to maintain our relationship. When 8th Master heard this, a hint of coldness flashed in his eyes. I'm just a snake. Don't elevate me too highly. If something too dangerous comes, I will be the first to run, he said. Hearing this, Deaf Granny regained her composure and calmly said, It's okay. I've troubled 8th Master this time. As the words fell, 8th Master was seen flicking a package of incense ashes into the air with his 2 fingers, and the powder scattered instantly. Looking at the countless footprints outside the courtyard, 8th Master hurriedly reminded Owen that the incense ashes leave traces. They are here. 2 ghosts' skin appeared at the entrance gate. Upon seeing this, 8th Master didn't say a word and took immediate action. He directly drew out the belt made of willow whip. He whipped Ghost's skin with 1 strike. They let out a tragic scream and disappeared into the air. They were just 2 dead people who had eaten raw souls and dared to come here to try their luck. But 8th Master hadn't finished speaking. A gigantic monster went straight for his head to bite. At the critical moment. Thank goodness Owen made a timely strike. He directly chopped the giant monster into 2 pieces. It let out a furious roar, revealing that it was the 100 Slashes killing blade. Upon hearing this, Owen's face showed a look of disdain. More than 10,000 enemies have been killed by the 100 Slashes killing blade. Just as Owen was feeling proud, the moon in the sky suddenly turned crimson. Ghosts from all directions also surrounded the 2 of them. 8th Master's face changed drastically as he witnessed the scene. The celestial dog devours the moon, with half of it covered in blood. He realized the danger and quickly retreated from Deaf Granny's body. What kind of creature did you save? The weather is so fierce. I won't accompany 8th Master any longer." He said so and turned to leave. But at this moment, a huge figure suddenly appeared behind him. Just then a voice asked, "Where are you going?" 8th Master was shocked and quickly turned around to look up. He saw a headless ghost several meters tall staring at him while holding its head. Deaf Granny, puzzled by the scene, asked, "Leo, how did you come out?" Leo, however, insisted without hesitation. "I was originally a lonely ghost wandering around, but have been worshipped by you, Deaf Granny, for many years. As one of the 4 pillars and 8 columns of the immortals, I naturally have to come out to help. I won't be cowardly and fearful like some people. And I feel a strong aura approaching rapidly in this direction." As soon as he finished speaking, a sudden white mist rose in the distance. In the white mist, 8 female ghosts in red clothes were carrying a sedan chair floating slowly towards us. Wherever they passed, the wandering ghosts and spirits were all frightened and knelt down in worship. In the blink of an eye, the ghost sedan chair arrived outside the courtyard. Inside the sedan chair sat an old lady with a pale face and skinny as a skeleton. Deaf Granny was suddenly stunned by the scene. Then she angrily roared towards Ghost sedan chair. "Hemp-clad Granny, as a ghost immortal who is about to achieve enlightenment, why would you damage your own virtue just to compete for a child of extreme? Just listen to a weird voice coming from inside the sedan chair. Deaf Granny, don't be afraid, I'm just here to take a look. But if you can't stop these little monsters, I don't mind joining in." Owen looked very puzzled at the sight. What identity does this person have? Deaf Granny's face turned serious. She is more troublesome than all these ghosts combined. Just at that moment, Miles, sitting on the roof, suddenly shouted, "Mom, there's dirt about to rush into the house." Ghost Immortal Leo, seeing this, quickly flew towards the house. "Don't worry, I'll go and block it." At this moment, a ghost is prying open the door, trying to rush into the house. Miles is sitting on the roof with the Great Seal in his hands, not daring to move at all. Miles's wife inside the house was trembling with fear. Just as the front door was about to be forced open, Leo rushed over at a critical moment. With one swipe, he tore the evil ghost in half. But there was an evil ghost on the window that, under the suppression of the Great Seal, could not enter the house. It had already stretched its long tongue towards the boy. And the boy directly grabbed its tongue. He even made a mocking sound at the evil ghost, and then bit it directly. Leo and Miles's wife happened to see this scene just as they arrived. They couldn't understand why the newborn baby had grown teeth. Meanwhile, outside the house, the ghosts were killing more and more. Deaf Granny knew that if this continued, once the incense ashes were contaminated by Een energy and lost their effectiveness, these evil ghosts would be completely unstoppable. Owen, on the other hand, calmly expressed, "What's there to be afraid of? The 2 of us are enough to keep them safe until they leave." Deaf Granny fell silent for a moment upon hearing Owen's words. She then shouted loudly inside the house, "Miles, take your wife and children and run. I will hold off these things for you." But before she could get any response, Leo suddenly appeared in front of Deaf Granny, holding the child. Owen was very puzzled at the sight. How did you manage to bring the child out? However, Deaf Granny quickly noticed something was amiss. Leo has been controlled by the child of extreme Een. The surrounding ghosts saw the child of extreme Een and emerged on their own. They all rushed forward eagerly to compete for it. But at this moment, the boy's eyes were shining fiercely, emitting an eerie laugh. He directly burrowed into the abdomen of the corpse. He is controlling the corpse to stand up. The female corpse seemed to come back to life again. She rushed towards the surrounding ghosts. The ghost suddenly let out a series of wailing cries. The howl of the female corpse echoed through the sky. At the moment she stopped, most of the surrounding ghosts had already been slaughtered. This scene shocked everyone beyond words. So ferocious right after birth. Who knows what he will become in the future? But 8th Master hiding aside knows. This won't last long. Once the evil energy in the child of extreme Yin's body disperses, he will become an ordinary child. Just as he said, after the child erupted with an astonishing energy. The corpse that was still chasing and biting the group of ghosts suddenly fell down. Then the boy's blood-red pupils slowly faded away. The ghosts around started to become restless again. They slowly moved towards the boy. Owen shouted loudly, "Don't touch that child!" and was about to charge forward. He was stopped by Deaf Granny. "If you go over there as an ordinary person, you would just be sending yourself to death for no reason." Then she took out a bone of a wronged soul. "Swallow this bone. I will turn into a vengeful ghost to stop these worship of evil. You take the children and run." Upon hearing this, Leo was shocked and turned pale. "No, you will never be able to reborn if you do this." But Granny showed a firm expression on her face. At this point, this is the only way. Just as Deaf Granny was about to take the bones of a wronged soul, the ground suddenly began to tremble, as if a major earthquake was about to occur. Owen saw the mountain in the distance turning into snow. Could it be an avalanche about to happen? But before he could think any further, several cracks appeared on the ground. A bone-chilling coldness emanated from them. Those ghosts touched the cold air and were instantly frozen into ice sculptures. Eighth Master was also so cold that he summoned his true form and wrapped himself into a ball. Even hemp-clad Granny also felt that something was not right. But Deaf Granny sensed that this was not an avalanche, but something was about to emerge from underground. As soon as she finished speaking, a figure 8 meters tall slowly emerged from the cold air. Rusty iron chains coiled around him in circles. At the end of the iron chains, dozens of evil ghosts were being dragged along. He is the legendary Snow Corpse General. Wherever he passed, not only did he scare the ghosts into kneeling and worshipping, even the hemp-clad Granny who was about to become a ghost immortal. She also fled at the first whiff of trouble. But before becoming the Snow Corpse General, his name was Wyatt. Because he was born silly from a young age, he was heartlessly abandoned by his parents in the wilderness. He fended for himself. Fortunately, Wyatt had innate divine powers and managed to survive by relying on his instincts. Later, he was discovered by a kind-hearted woodsman. The woodsman brought him home and adopted him as his own son. Due to Wyatt's honesty and diligence, he won the favor of the woodsman's daughter, Riley. In this way, witnessed by the woodsman couple, the two of them got married and became husband and wife. The good times didn't last long. The bully in the village, who liked Riley, learned about Riley's marriage. He relied on his older brother, who worked as a constable in the yamen. He actually brought a group of people to the woodcutter's house, wanting to forcibly take Riley away. To everyone's surprise, Wyatt was extremely brave and ended up beating up the people who came instead. But the resentful bully used a strategy to lure Wyatt away. The woodcutter fought desperately. But their whole family also suffered a tragic end at the hands of bully. When Wyatt returned home again, the family had already become a few cold corpses. Seeing his wife hanging from the beam, Wyatt was furious. He immediately rushed into the bully's house and slaughtered the entire family. After personally settling the score with his enemy, Wyatt also lost hope in life. He knelt in front of his family's grave for 9 days and 9 nights until he became a corpse covered by ice and snow. Yama learned that he was a person of deep sentiments and loyalty. Instead of condemning him to the 18 levels of hell, he appointed him as the Snow Corpse General, transforming him into a mountain deity to guard a region. Deaf Granny, upon seeing the newcomer, who was the Snow Corpse General, hurriedly pulled Owen to kneel and pay respect together. If the Snow Corpse General also came to snatch the child of Extreme Een, they would be helpless against him. However, the Snow Corpse General paid no attention to them. Instead, he walked straight towards the child of Extreme Een. When the child of Extreme Een saw the Snow Corpse General, he was not only unafraid but also smiled and reached out for a hug. Seeing this, 8th Master, who was hiding on the side, was directly scared out of his wits. He immediately transformed back to his original form and tried to escape. However, the Snow Corpse General just pulled off an iron chain from his body. The powerful force caused the evil ghosts being dragged behind by the iron chain to emit sharp and miserable screams. Then he continued to rub the iron chain in his hand non-stop. He forcefully pulled up the iron chain, turning it into a shiny black earring. He put the earring on the child of Extreme Yin's ear. Instantly, fresh blood seeped out. But the next moment, it was all sucked back into the earring. The Snow Corpse General showed a relieved smile at the sight. Then he went straight to the female corpse on the ground. At this time, the Eighth Master, who had transformed back to his original form, was trying to escape, but was caught by him and stepped on the vital point, causing him to scream in agony. The Snow Corpse General slowly picked up the female corpse. He walked towards outside the village. Seeing his mother's body being taken away, the child of Extreme Yin cried loudly. The deaf granny with a lingering fear in her heart hurriedly comforted him, picking him up and saying, "Don't cry, everything is fine." While the evil ghosts around had no chance to escape. They were also dragged into the underground by the Snow Corpse General using iron chains. When he had completely sunk underground, the first ray of morning sunlight also shone into the village. Owen couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Those dirt issues were finally resolved. But deaf Granny looked gravely into the distance. She lowered her head and gently stroked the head of the child of Extreme Yin. The great calamity is not over yet. Before this child's soul is stable, evil ghosts within 100-mile radius will still come every night to snatch the child of Extreme Yin for cultivation. Upon hearing this, Owen's face changed drastically. What? They are still coming? When will his soul stabilize? The Eighth Master, who was about to flee, said solemnly. It's still too early. In order to stabilize the soul, one must open the gate and close the heavens. At the very least, he must be able to speak first. This made Owen extremely surprised. Waiting for the child to speak. It will be at least 1 or 2 years. How can we get through this? Deaf Granny, however, had a serious expression. It seems that there is only that solution left. Next, the two arrived at the big pine tree at East Peak. Deaf Granny placed the offering she carried on the ground. She kept chanting some words in her mouth. Pine Grandpa, I've come to see you. You saved my life. Today, I dare to ask you to save me again. But before she could finish her sentence, a sudden gust of wind blew up, causing pine needles to slowly drift down to the ground. Pine needles form a misfortune. Deaf Granny's complexion changed slightly at the sight. I know this is a great misfortune, but I can only come to ask you for help. While Deaf Granny was speaking, she kept kowtowing non-stop. Fresh red blood. Spilled on the white snow, it was particularly eye-catching. Owen on the side looked at the fresh blood on Deaf Granny's forehead. He also took a step forward to stand under the pine tree. Although I, Owen, do not believe in ghosts or gods, and do not kneel before heaven and earth. But if you are willing to help, I am willing to kowtow to you. After saying that, he suddenly knelt down on the ground. After a few minutes, the pine tree seemed to be contemplating something. A gust of breeze blew again. Immediately, a pine branch fell and hit Owen on the head. Owen is holding the pine branch, looking very puzzled. What is this? And Deaf Granny, upon seeing this, had a smile on her face. This is the pine oil and eternal pine that we need. What use could such a small pine branch like eternal pine have? Upon hearing this, Deaf Granny chuckled. You will find out soon. Shortly after, the two of them went down the mountain and returned to the village. As soon as they arrived in the yard, Deaf Granny inserted the pine branch into the soil. Owen behind them saw this scene, but he looked puzzled. What are you doing again? It's already so late, and you still have the leisure to be in this kind of tree. But as soon as the words fell, he suddenly froze in place. Just as the freshly arranged pine branch was swiftly growing. In just a few breaths, it grew into a towering tree. Seeing the situation, Deaf Granny revealed a contented smile. With Pine Grandpa's eternal pine, those dirt will no longer dare to come. But then she looked solemnly at Owen. Next is the most important change in appearance. After everything is ready at night, Deaf Granny lit 99 candles at home. The so-called change appearance. It means using the skin of a spiritual entity that is over 1,000 years old to seal off all the spiritual realms of this child. But doing so will also lead to the child being unable to engage in spiritual practice in the future. Later, Deaf Granny sighed again. This skin of 1,000-year-old spiritual entity. I have practiced spirituality all my life and have never seen it. For now, I can only use the skin of another spiritual entity as a substitute. Hopefully this child. Before she finished speaking, Eighth Master suddenly said, "Is it that as long as something has 1,000 years of spiritual cultivation, it's fine no matter what it is?" After hearing this, Deaf Granny's face was full of anticipation. "Eighth Master, do you have it?" Owen, on the other hand, looked at him with a disdainful look. Master Eighth was very angry when he saw this. "Don't look down on me, even though I haven't done well. Do you think my ancestors were not well off? My ancestors were descendants of dragons. And snakes like to shed their skin. Isn't it simple to just molt?" The two of them immediately lit up after hearing that. "Then let's thank Eighth Master." "But Eighth Master has a condition. This thing can be given to you. Can you please not mention the incident where I fled in the heat of the moment?" The headless ghost King Leo, who has a quick temper, shouted loudly in response. "Stop the nonsense and quickly bring it out." Seeing the situation, Deaf Granny chuckled and tried to smooth things over. "Eighth Master, you aren't retreating in the face of danger. You are clearly going to get reinforcements." After saying that, she looked serious. "Please protect this place for me." Eighth Master and Leo responded earnestly. "No problem." Then, Deaf Granny was seen dripping pine oil into the mouth of the child of Extreme Een. The next second, the child of Extreme Een emitted golden light all over their body. Deaf Granny placed him in the center of the magic formation. "Eighth Master, where is the skin of the spiritual entity?" Heard what Deaf Granny said. Eighth Master immediately spit out a green mold from his mouth towards Child of Extreme Een. Under Deaf Granny's spell, Child of Extreme Een was instantly wrapped up in the mold like a mummy, emitting a heartbreaking scream. And Deaf Granny just stared at him solemnly. "Child, if you can't control this dragon's skin, then your life will come to an end here. However, the process of changing appearance is extremely dangerous. One wrong move could result in a backlash and be possessed by the dragon soul." Owen, who was watching from the side, was very worried. The dragon soul contained in this dragon skin is so powerful. Can this child survive? Deaf Granny was also helpless upon hearing this. Suddenly, she seemed to have figured something out. She quickly asked Owen to bring the things left by the child's mother. Owen hurriedly rummaged through his pocket and pulled out a piece of jade pendant. Just as the jade pendant was taken out, it flew automatically into the hands of the child of Extreme Een. Suddenly, it emitted dazzling golden light. In the blink of an eye, the powerful dragon soul was completely shattered by the golden light. Then the light merged into the body of the child of Extreme Een. When the fusion was completed, the child of Extreme Een smiled innocently and brightly again. He was completely unaware that a dragon pattern had also appeared on his back. Deaf Granny saw that he had faced many hardships since birth, so she named him Pax, hoping that he would grow up peacefully. And Owen besides suddenly noticed that the jade pendant in the hands of the child of Extreme Een was engraved with green. It must be the surname of this child's family. Upon hearing this, Deaf Granny looked kindly at the child of Extreme Een and said, "In that case, let's call you Pax Green." 5 years have passed in the blink of an eye. Pax carefully followed Owen up the mountain to gather herbs. Suddenly, their footing slipped. With a bang, he fell to the ground. Owen quickly asked in concern, "Pax, are you okay?" Pax, on the other hand, got up. He smiled and shook his head to indicate that he was fine. He tightly held a handful of herbs in his hand. Owen, seeing this, stepped forward. He patted Pax's head and praised, "Pax, you're amazing. You found an herb so quickly." Pax, however, smiled and expressed that he wanted to gather more herbs to help Uncle Miles heal. When Uncle Miles gets better, he can take me to catch frogs. Grandma won't be sad anymore. Owen's face darkened upon hearing this. I'm afraid Uncle Miles might not be able to be cured. And at Deaf Granny's house at this moment. The doctor that was called in is looking at Miles, who is lying on the bed, breathing faintly. The doctor couldn't help but sigh deeply, indicating that he was helpless. Upon hearing this, Miles's wife burst into tears immediately. Deaf Granny also forced a bitter smile. It has been a month since the outbreak of this epidemic. Those who could leave the village have already left. Those who can't escape can only wait to be infected and die. It seems that sooner or later, I will be involved too. By then, it will be enough for our whole family to reunite underground. As soon as these words were spoken, weak Miles quickly spoke up to comfort. Mother, don't say such discouraging words. Even if I'm gone, Pax can still take care of you. But just after saying this, Miles couldn't help but start coughing. At the same time, he also didn't forget to instruct that after his death, his wife should remarry when she gives birth to the child. She is still so young. But before he could finish his words, Miles' wife exclaimed excitedly that she would never remarry. Upon hearing this, Deaf Granny couldn't stop her tears from falling. Rest assured, I will definitely treat her as my own daughter. She will get married in a grand and beautiful way. Just as several people were heartbroken and despondent, Pax suddenly pushed open the door. Uncle Miles, I brought the medicine back. Deaf Granny quickly stopped him. Pax, please go out quickly. Be careful not to be infected by the epidemic. But Pax said he was not afraid. I have medicine. He then went straight around Deaf Granny and headed straight for Uncle Miles lying on the sickbed. But he was grabbed by the doctor and pulled back by his clothes and hat. The child is young but quite opinionated. Do you know how many people have died in this epidemic already? Just a few broken weeds and you think. The doctor hadn't finished speaking when he was shocked by the herbs in Pax's arms. Seeing this scene, Pax spoke directly. Buplurum, astragalus root, almamum fruit, licorice root. Pinellia tuber. These herbs are boiled into minor buplurum decoction. It is most effective for dispelling epidemic diseases and expelling evil influences. The doctor was pleasantly surprised and held up Pax. Why didn't I think of it? Who taught you about minor buplurum decoction? Please introduce me to this master. Pax was about to answer that no one had taught him. Owen suddenly rushed into the room. In order to keep Pax's extraordinary secret hidden, he had to bravely claim that he was the one who taught him. The doctor became even more excited after hearing this. He rushed over and grabbed Owen's hand. The doctor's eyes sparkled as he stared at him. I never expected you to hide so deeply. Deaf Granny lovingly patted Pax on the head. She knew deep down that Owen was not capable of this. Good child, you have saved our entire village. She then hurriedly ran towards the gate to share this news with everyone. But at this moment, Pax waved to Deaf Granny. Grandma, remember to say hi to the sister in the well for me. Upon hearing this, Deaf Granny's face instantly changed color, and she stood frozen in place. She hurriedly asked where Pax had seen it in the well. Pax thought for a moment. It seemed to be in the well at Thomas's house. That sister also flew out and licked Uncle Miles's neck while lying on his back. Miles's wife was horrified after hearing this. You not change Pax's appearance? How can he still see that dirt? Deaf Granny's expression tightened at the mention. When changing appearance, it seems that his eyes were revealed without being covered by dragon scales. I'll take the opportunity of delivering medicine to go and see the sister Pax mentioned. Deaf Granny and a few others soon arrived at Thomas's house. Deaf Granny stepped forward and knocked on the door a few times. Before long, Thomas opened the door in confusion. Aunt, how did you come? Before Deaf Granny could explain her purpose, the doctor eagerly stepped forward to inform her of Thomas's purpose for coming. He mentioned that minor buplurum decoction can cure the plague. Several patients who just took the medicine had already seen their fever subside. Thomas quickly pulled the doctor into the house, as a guest after hearing this. Deaf Granny and Owen also followed and walked into the yard. They looked around the yard. They did not find anything unusual. Strange, there is no energy here. She looked at the well in confusion again. Still no issues whatsoever. Could it be that Pax was mistaken? And at this moment, the doctor who left the medicine and Owen are about to leave. Thomas is very grateful, and wants to have a few people stay for dinner before leaving. Owen waved his hand to refuse his kind offer. Deaf Granny was still worried and approached to ask again. Any recent discomfort? Thomas scratched his head. There isn't any discomfort, just feeling a bit sleepy. Deaf Granny also felt uncertain upon hearing this. Is there really something wrong with Thomas's family? So she took out a willow-wood dagger and gave it to him. Hanging it at the door can ward off evil spirits and ward off epidemics. But when Thomas took the dagger, his eyes looked a bit evasive. However, he quickly returned to normal. He accepted it and expressed his gratitude repeatedly. After a few people left, he followed Deaf Granny's instructions and hung the dagger on the door. But the dagger had just been hung on the door for a short while. The originally intact dagger unexpectedly cracked open with a seam, oozing a large amount of foul-smelling black substance from inside. After Deaf Granny returned home, she sensed that the willow-wood dagger had been destroyed by the worship of evil. She immediately brought Pax back to Thomas's house. Seeing Deaf Granny come to his house several times, Thomas was very puzzled. I wonder if there's something fishy going on at home. And Deaf Granny, looking at the willow-wood dagger hanging on the door, returned to its original state. Comforting Thomas, she said, "Don't worry, your house is very clean." But when Thomas returned to the room, Deaf Granny looked at Pax sternly and said, "Pax, did you really see that sister?" Pax replied, "Granny, I really saw her. It was yesterday." After saying that, Pax leaned over the well and shouted, "Sister, are you home? Grandma and I came to see you." Deaf Granny, seeing this ridiculous scene, couldn't help but smile. "Child, with you shouting like that, even if she was home, you would have scared her away." She then took out a few copper coins and scattered them into the well. "With my old copper coins that have been offered to the 4 pillars and 8 columns of the immortals, she shouldn't be able to make much waves either." After she finished doing all of this, Deaf Granny held Pax's hand and was about to leave. Just as they reached the front gate of Thomas's house, the gate was pushed open. "Your daughter-in-law is about to give birth." Upon hearing this, Granny and Pax both brightened up with joy and hurried home. They ended up tossing and turning until late at night. The child still hasn't been born. Just as everyone was getting anxious, the midwife Grace suddenly burst out of the door, sweating profusely. "Hurry and get the hospital in the car, the child is in difficult labor." Upon hearing this, Miles was stunned for a moment. He hurriedly went to borrow a cart. Owen went back to the house to get money. But Grace stopped them. "Can't go to the town. We have to go to the large hospital in the county." Upon hearing this, Miles knelt on the ground in pain, holding his head. "It's over 300 miles to the nearest hospital. Even with a car, it would take 6 to 7 hours. How can my wife hold on for so long?" Owen also looked worried. He quickly asked Grace if there were any other options. But Grace shook her head. "If there were any other solutions, I wouldn't have brought this up either." Upon hearing this despairing response, Miles let out a desperate cry to the heavens. "Oh God, spare my wife!" Just as everyone was feeling anxious and troubled, Pax suddenly turned around and spoke. "Uncle Miles, don't worry, I have a solution." Grace, on the other hand, shook her head. "This is a matter of life and death, Pax, don't make trouble." Pax had just wanted to speak out the solution, but he was immediately interrupted by Owen. In order to avoid revealing his secret that was different from others, he quickly pulled him aside to ask, "Pax, do you have any ideas? Please tell me." Pax spoke earnestly. 1 lian of dong K, 5 chien of chuanxiong, and 8 chien of turtle shell. Burn a lump of residual blood into ash, Then add 4 lyon of raw astragalus. After decocting in water, it is called bone-opening powder. Before taking the medicine, give Uncle Wyatt the ginseng tablet I received. It will definitely help save my sister-in-law and the baby. Miles, upon hearing this, excitedly stepped forward and hugged Pax tightly. You are willing to bring out such a precious ginseng for Pax. Uncle Miles will always remember your great kindness. And Pax, on the other hand, calmly expressed that it was nothing. In a short while, the bone-opening powder was ready. It was brought in front of Miles' wife. She could hear that it was the ancestral recipe of the Owen family. However, she dared not drink it. The deaf granny on the side spoke in a vague manner, after mentioning Pax's name. She only felt relieved then. It must be the medication Pax prescribed. Immediately, she gulped down all the medication in one go. After drinking it all, her complexion improved significantly, indicating that she was determined to give birth to the child. Sure enough, not long after, the sound of the baby's crying was heard. It is obvious that the child was successfully born. Mother and child are safe. It's a chubby little girl. Miles was very excited and approached eagerly. Your eyes are so beautiful. She looks like my daughter-in-law. Grace also worked hard all night. She had to leave after the baby was born. Deaf Granny felt grateful to her. Granny walked her to the door and reminded her. That thing is up to you now. Grace reassured Deaf Granny.